All right, welcome to the Driveline Baseball podcast. We're joined today by Jack Lambert. We're talking about sort of the science and modeling behind our new college in-season reports. And so you've got pulled up here the pitching one, is that right?
Yep. Yeah, we got the pitching in-season smart report here. This works for any college athletes, minor leaguers, major leaguers, anyone who has data reliably tracked online.
Okay, so talk me through a little bit about just like the underlying mechanics of what generates the smart report.
Yeah, so we're using publicly available data from MLB, minor leagues, and then we also pay for a service that gets us college access. And what we can do with that is provide you the same support we do in the off season when you're using Pulse, the wearable workload monitor, in season. If you're pitching in a game where you don't have Pulse, we're able to leverage the amount of pitches you threw, the duration that lasted, number of innings pitched, and your velocity to give you a pretty accurate workload recommendation there. So there's no more blind spot of I was training and wearing Pulse these 3 days, then I pitched, and now my workload in my app is all screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
It's all completely integrated so that we're giving you that workload estimate, telling you exactly how you should take that next day off or next day lighter or whatever that should be when you're ready to go again, rather than just some arbitrary pitch count number dictating whether you pitch in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or need to take a week off.
Yeah. So what you're saying is like on the pitching side of things, it used to be basically like you wear your Pulse and you're throwing on it, and then if you can't wear it in game, which was a big issue for like a decent number of pitchers,
Mm-hmm.
that there's just this huge gap that you've got to like estimate somehow.
Yep.
And we had guys like trying to do that themselves or like whatever, but you're saying here, like you throw, your name is logged in like the database that we're monitoring, and it just automatically populates with your workload data the next day.
Exactly. So yeah, Pulse is a great tool for off-season training. Allows you to build up to a level where you're going to be ready for the season, but is most applicable in the season, specifically for like relievers or guys who are not on a 5-day schedule and know exactly what they're doing all the time. So being able to fill in those gaps in the most crucial sense, to know when you're ready to go, when you need to take it easy, is just immensely valuable for a relief pitcher, starter, anyone who's throwing baseballs, honestly.
And so what goes into that estimate? Like how are we able to estimate somebody's workload based off of like the number of pitches that they threw against Central Arkansas in February?
Yep. Yeah. So we have a bunch of paired data in Gym of guys going at their max intent with Pulse, and then paired that with their arm speeds, their arm torques, and their actual pitch velos. We're able to get a decent estimate for what that workload actually is based only on the pitching velocity and number of throws they had. So that plus a handful of guys who do wear Pulse in game that we have paired data from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like Josh Heshka is a great one there. Those samples of data allow us to get a very good recommendation of or a very good analysis of what your workload was that day, and then subsequently the recommendation for where do we go from here.
Yeah. So the beauty of it, right, is that like there's now this like sensorless sort of application of the workload data where it's like, like I didn't get to use it, and so there can be some guys that just like don't even throw with it during the season because it's like incomplete.
Exactly.
But now that doesn't exactly matter.
No, not for the game sense. It definitely is still relevant. Honestly, like one of just the things you wouldn't even think about. Like if you're a reliever and next day you're shagging balls in the outfield, a day after you threw, should you be throwing those balls in to the to pick them up, or should you be rolling them? Like stuff as dumb as that can contribute to your workload, like in the stress that's being put on your arm. So just wearing it during practice, and then don't worry about it in the game. It's great if you do wear it in the game. It's going to be slightly more accurate, but it does fill in that gap of the main goal of why we're training.
Yeah, and it does help for relievers quite a bit too, because they see some of the
Yeah,
larger like variances, correct?
especially in college when you usually have like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some weeks you got a Tuesday, some you got a Thursday, some you got a tournament and you're going all week. Like it's just so irregular, especially when you get to playoff time and everything. Then with the starters, it even gets irregular.
Hmm.
Uh, that like that group of that subset of athletes, like this is just super applicable to just being smart with how they're going about their business and knowing when they're going to be at their best and capitalizing on that.
Yeah, and so not only do we have the session data for
Mm-hmm.
the workload stuff, but we also you've also started incorporating some like defense independent
Yeah,
statistics and some other things that are useful. Like what do we have available for guys that are pitching in college?
yeah. So within the app that you're usually tracking your off-season progress, we've now added in some summary statistics to give you a gauge for where you're at. You obviously know how you feel on the field, but having that quantitative feedback of what's actually happening and kind of separating the signal from the noise.
Yeah.
You're not just looking at a box score sheet or your team stat summary. Like we've picked the stats that we think are most applicable to give you an idea of where you're truly at in your season. So uh, those are we have ERA, WHIP, two traditional ones you'd find in your uh, basic stat line, but then also strikeout minus walk rate, which is not super well known among a lot of college athletes, but it is very applicable in MLB analysis. That metric will correlate to basically any next year statistic that's meaningful, better than ERA or any sort of rate stat like that. That simple measure, just K rate minus walk rate,
Hmm.
gives you a very good gauge for uh, how good are you actually,
Hmm.
which can be valuable feedback. If you have a 5 ERA, but your K minus BB is decent, you don't panic. Like, just give it time. It's a good chance that you're better than the numbers show right now.
And what are you like? What are we comparing that against? Like major league averages? Are we comparing that? Like what's the comparison?
Yeah, so these metrics are pulled from MLB averages and then adjusted for college levels there. So FIP is another defensive independent stat. So that's fielding independent pitching. It's essentially an ERA estimator that's going to give you a gauge for how good you are, factoring out all the impact of balls in play. So this is relevant in MLB specifically as an ERA estimator, but I would argue even more relevant in college because defenses in general are just worse. You want to cut out all the noise from that, and FIP is basically only taking into account how many guys you strike out, how many guys do you walk, how many home runs do you give up.
Hmm.
So those are the three outcomes that you are the only one that have control over. There's no defense involved in that. So having that metric too, in addition to your ERA, your K minus BB, really help give the complete picture of what type of pitcher are you and should I be worrying about my ERA right now?
Yeah.
Is it going to get better? Am I underperforming my ERA, overperforming? Uh, we think with this suite of metrics, you have a decent gauge. You and your trainer can have good conversations weekly just on how things are going. Does anything need to change, or are we good to stay on track?
Yeah, I mean, this has been the conversations that I've had with the training floor staff have mostly been around like how do we just have good conversations when guys are away from the gym? Like
Yep.
it becomes like you want to check in on guys, but then you also, want to have some value to add to that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And this just gives such a cleaner way to be able to, to begin those conversations or at least to like start looking under the hood. Because
Exactly.
the two main things that we're trying to focus on in season are if you're slumping, how do we get you out of that as
Mm-hmm.
quickly as possible? And if you're doing great, like how do we extend that as
Yep.
far as possible? And a lot of that comes with just some information, like some simple information
Yep.
about why things are going good.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, don't move away from this pitch, or like, hey,
Yeah.
your workload is actually like in a spot where you're like pretty primed for performance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't mess that up.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that gives some pretty simple takeaways for athletes so they can stay, competitively focused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the cool part about these two is that we have a lot more metrics under the hood, but this is the snapshot. We're not going to overload you with information, but we have that supplemental information of a database built with whiff rates, swing rates, stuff like that can supplement this that your trainers will bring up in conversation, whatever. But this is the overview that we think can pretty well encapsulate where you're at and how you're doing.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good because it's especially in season. I mean it looks like two screens, but it's really just one screen scrolled down.
Yep.
And at the very top, it's like these balls, don't throw them harder than this miles per hour. Then you've got where your workload stuff is, and then you've got how your stats are trending. And so it's a good little you can see where the check engine lights are.
Yep.
And act accordingly. What show me the one for let's talk about the hitting one.
Yeah, so the hitters here, we have this view at the top here. Again, this is supposed to be a scroll. They're just side by side. So we have your bat speed, attack angle, your whiff percentage, and then your expected top eighth of exit velo. So this follows kind of a traditional smart report here, and that bat speed, attack angle, we're going to be monitoring regularly. So that's if you're wearing blast, we'll get you those. The expected top eighth is essentially saying how hard do we think your hardest hit ball should be based on your bat speed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's giving you a gauge for what should I be expecting. If I am expected to hit a ball 110 and I've only hit one 105, what's going on? The answer is likely some swing mechanics, but these are, again, like you said, just the approach. Check engine lights to make sure everything's aligning there. On the right here, we also have some of the outcome stats that we think are pretty applicable for the hitters. So like for pitchers, we said that was K minus BB and FIP, ERA. Here we have your strikeout percentage, your walk percentage, your WOBA, your ISO. We think these are, and your air pull percentage, pretty applicable stats to let us know where you're at from a bat to ball perspective with K percentage, get you on an idea for how are your at-bats ending? Are you striking out too much? Swing decisions, proxy with walk percentage, batted ball profile with air pull percentage, and then WOBA, which is a cool application. We're not using, so for context, WOBA is weighted on base average. At the MLB level, there are specific constants that each plate appearance outcome is weighted by. So essentially taking the true value of each event and factoring that into an all-encompassing metric. So
when you say event, you mean like batted ball outcome.
Exactly.
Like home run, double,
air, triple, walk. Yeah. So
out.
We know that, getting on base, like on base percentage weights everything equally. You got on base. Good job.
Yep.
+1. Slugging percentage weights things as singles worth 1, doubles worth 2, triples worth 3. So this is taking the true value of each of these. The interesting part about this WOBA, though, is that it is not taking into account the MLB average weight for these. So we're intrinsically accounting for the fact.
Level specific.
Exactly. So D1, D2, D3, JUCO, we know the specific value of each event at this level.
Why do the weights change? What drives a lot of that?
It's a good question. So if you think in MLB, defense is pretty polished. If you hit a hard ground ball in the 5.5 hole, I don't know, maybe you have a 30% chance of a hit. In college, if you do that with a metal bat and on turf, might be a 60% chance of a hit.
Mm-hmm.
Defenses are worse. Different bats, different playing surfaces. So overall, what we found is that in college, like singles are worth more than a single is in MLB relative to like a home run, for example. Just getting on base is more valuable at the college level because you have worse defenses, relatively speaking. Of course, college defenders are still decent. And then, contact is easier to make, so it's a greater chance to get moved over. So that's the reason why that WOBA is more relevant, in my opinion, than MLB-based WOBA.
And so, like what you're saying is basically just that, like, because because the gameplay is different and the athletes are of certain qualities, that like it's actually better for certain outcomes.
Exactly.
And this is also like, you know, the way that I always think about this is like, you know, the quality, there's no major league team who could survive like just bunting for a base hit every time and then stealing 2 bases.
Yep.
But that is like the surefire way to win a little league game.
Exactly.
Like exclusively because you have these effects of like, the runners are fast, the defenses are a certain caliber, like the pitchers are whatever. And so you've got these like multiple extremes where it's like, if you just bunt the ball every time on Nolan Arenado, it's like, all right, thanks for
that ain't
27 free outs. You know, like that's it. So yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I think what you're saying is that there's this threshold in the middle that we can map and then explain to our athletes to be like, hey, look, like actually, you know, like in your league, like contact is really good. Getting on base is really good. Like you don't necessarily want to sell out entirely for certain amounts of power if there's like ways that you can control other ways. And it's about like offensive production.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think like qualitatively just watching college baseball versus MLB, you see a lot more small ball. And,
of course. Because it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know if it's the most optimal way to play, but it's more optimal to play that way in college than it is in MLB.
It works more in college.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, all this WOBA is doing is basically taking that like qualitative thing you notice and putting the numbers to it and saying like, here's how good you are at the college level. I mean, we can run your WOBA at the MLB level too if you're a draft prospect and you want to see, are my skills going to translate?
Sure.
Whatever. So like, it's totally transferable. This this version just gives you an idea for in your specific environment, how well does your skill set fit? And,
thinking back about sort of like athletes that are either like doing really well or doing really poorly and like in a slump, like how does this information help them in the season?
Yeah, I think kind of the same thing we hit on with the pitching. Just having the conversations with your trainer. I like the spray chart here too, gives you an idea of kind of where that batted ball profile is going. If your ISO is down and we can see your air pull is down and we see you're pulling a bunch of ground balls but not elevating. Like that's content for you to talk through with your trainer. Like you can have those conversations there with the context of what's actually happening. Pair that with what are you feeling, to have a much more intelligent conversation than I'm 0 for my last 12. What do I do?
Yeah,
we know what's happening. Are you striking out in your last 12? Are you walking at all? Are you chasing too many pitches? Is your batted ball profile crap? Like we can figure that out now. And not figure it out like we have to dig deep either. It's right here every day for you to see.
Sure. I mean, just summarizing it, especially since you've done analytics at the college level, you know, go Irish. But like what do you see the like summing it up from your perspective? Like, what do you think is some of the great value points for collegiate athletes in like knowing more of this information on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can understand from the athlete perspective, not wanting to be overloaded with information, which is why I think have built like what we think are the pillars for just the checkpoints for, am I hitting what I need to do here? And if I'm not, then let's look at the other stuff. Let's dig deeper. And I think it is valuable. You don't want to overthink in the season, but having these just checkpoints, not going to overload you with only 5 stats here and a batted ball distribution, but just gives you an idea for where you're at. How do the underlying metrics compare to the actual output on the field?
Yeah.
Is it something to panic about? Are we going to be fine?
Yeah. I mean, I know it's been a lot of legwork for the R&D team. I'm incredibly excited to, you know, to have it start showing up in app for our athletes. And, you know, I think both pitchers and hitters can, you know, really, really benefit from stuff like this. So
definitely
nice work.